Hi, my name is Kitty Hu, and I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the director of Golden Boy. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this film. It truly means a lot to my family. The story and piece really came about as a way for me to also personally navigate the grief that I was going through and a lot of the traumas and emotions that it was bringing up. And I think it was also a way for my family to kind of document this time, even though it was a difficult period to go through. I'm going to be drawing from some questions that the festival director generously shared with me. And so the first question being, there aren't many opportunities to discuss the emotional health of older Asian male figures because there's a perception of them being emotionally closed off, but your father seemed pretty candid. Do you think taking on the caregiving role for your mom helped him open up more? I think the caregiving role for him has fundamentally shaped his own perspectives on life now and also how he moves about through the world. He always tells me that he wanted to travel and move to this place and go to that place and see the world and do it with my mom. But now he shares a lot about how he just likes to live in the day to day and is just very grateful for the quote unquote mundane things that happen on a daily basis. Um, there's definitely still some communication issues there, or not issues, but just differences in how we communicate. And I think as I've gotten older, even though I was socialized in within a Chinese household, but in American society, I think I've also been better at recognizing that and not pushing my dad to communicate in a certain way that I've learned to speak, and to see and observe and recognize the ways that he does communicate his emotions. So I think there's definitely like a give and understand from both ends. And I think he's also been a little bit better about that. And he's shared how growing up he always thought I was too emotional. And that was one thing that he told me about to be careful about. But it was something that I always thought was part of my strength and the reason why I would like telling stories and talking to people and being able to connect with people emotionally. So I think we've both kind of come to a place of mutual respect about that. And there's still days where he's exhausted and he shares some of those emotions with me. But I also don't want to push him too much and want to recognize that as much as boundaries are helpful and healthy for myself, I also want to make sure that he also has those boundaries. And the second question being, how difficult was it to have the conversation about your mom with your dad? Did making the film strengthen your relationship with him? Yes, completely strengthened my relationship with him. And also because the situation completely also shaped our relationship a bit. I've shared that growing up we didn't have the best relationship, definitely argued a lot. But this situation happening with my mom had to pull us together, and we had to show up for each other and recognize that our three-person family here in this situation came first, and that we needed to figure out a way to make sure that we were taking care of each other and not further adding on to a lot of the grief and emotions that were coming up then. Thankfully, my dad was actually really open to being in this film. I think he saw it that I also needed it as a way to process what was happening, and I'm just very grateful that he allowed me that, and was just really cool with me just bringing the camera in different places and once in a while asking me maybe not to film or not knowing why I was filming something. But I think he ultimately also really is proud of the piece and shares it with family and uses it as a way to communicate what we were going through with other relatives as well. Another question, did interviewing your relatives give you a better impression of your dad? Was there anything you learned about him that you didn't know before? I always thought of my dad as the golden boy in the whole family, hence the title of the film, and I think the larger family does too. Like, he's the kid who was always helping everyone out, did well in school, immigrated to America, and now has a whole family over there, and so our whole family always viewed him as that. I think I definitely got to hear a lot of just fun childhood stories from my relatives that didn't necessarily make it into the film. But I also think that even though I knew my family viewed him as this golden child, growing up, I was always like, that's not true. Like, no one knows this side of him where he argues with me and does all these things. But talking to my relatives actually helped me also appreciate my dad a lot more. Has your family watched the film? What has been the reaction from your relatives? I am still trying to figure out a way for my relatives in China to watch it, but a lot of relatives based in the US have seen it. And my parents were the first people that I wanted to show the film to. My dad had a fun time watching it, I think, because it's weird to see your face so big on screen. And he occasionally will randomly text me and be like, I'm sending the film to blah and blah, and I'm like, okay, and then he'll be like, why is there a password on it now? What's the password? So he enjoys it, and I think it's something that he's secretly proud of or wants to share about, which is great. And another question, what do you hope others take away from your film? I hope more people, whether in the Asian diaspora or not, feel comfortable trying to have these conversations, not necessarily about situations like this, but just talking and opening up to a lot of parents, because I know from a lot of peers there's still some barriers within that dialogue, and I recognize that the communication differences and also upbringing and some of maybe the trauma that we've experienced as 1.5 second third gen folks are all very much part of that conversation. But I know that at least within my peers, there's a lot of people who genuinely want to connect with their parents more on that deeper level, and I hope that we can have a lot more of those conversations. And something else is, this film was very much more a personal story, but I really hope that I can do more with it on the healthcare end of things, or maybe even work on future pieces that talk about our healthcare system at large, because when you actually realize how harmful that system is and how it doesn't truly support patients and patients' families in the way that we all need to be supported, despite good intentions of all the individuals within that healthcare system at large, it's too late, because you realize it only when you are in the ambulance or your loved one is on the hospital bed and actually needs that care. And by then, the amount of effort it takes to fight back these crazy bills, or to fight insurance if we're lucky to have insurance, or to advocate for yourself within a system that isn't accessible for you, it's just too late. And I hope that more people can learn about our healthcare system through ways such as this film, but also through other pieces and articles and whatnot, and advocate better, because healthcare is a fundamental right. And so the thing that happened to my mom, for example, and that happens to a lot of people, is not something that, we wished for. Everything was kind of like, it could have happened to me, it could have happened to you, could have happened to them. And I think everyone deserves to be able to have accessible and quality healthcare. And the upcoming project I'm working on, I want to lift up solidarity stories. It's a little bit in a different vein, but it's at solidaritystories.org, and it's an awesome series, not necessarily a little bit video-based, a little bit case study-based, and a toolkit to talk more about solidarity practices, both within the AAPI umbrella, but also with Black leaders, and fight how can Asians better show up for Black liberation. It's something that very speaks to this current social political moment, but also beyond. So I hope more people can check that out. And I will also be working on a more of a maybe experimental piece about understanding how trauma is rooted in our bodies and navigating that to also move better and heal. So if anyone ever wants to connect with me, I'm very accessible. I'm just Kitty X Who on all platforms and emails. Would love to connect and hear your thoughts on this film as well. And thank you again for watching the piece.